Today's guest is Arfa Syed. She's on the growth and strategy team at Leidos. Arfa graduated from the ACT-IAC Voyagers 22 program, which I'm a big fan of. She sat on the cybersecurity board at Nova, and she was also a 2022 Nova commencement speaker, which you got to see it. It's on the internet. It's possible to see. On top of all of that, Arfa is also a freelance writer and speaker focused on IT, cybersecurity, and digital media. And finally, Arfa was recently certified to teach yoga. So I've known Arfa for years. I'm so excited to finally get you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me this morning. Very excited to be here.
So for people who haven't had a chance to interact with you at networking events and get to know you like I have over the years, talk about your background, talk about where you're from, who you are, and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I am an immigrant to the US. I was born in Pakistan, and so education was something that was always really, really important to pursue in the US. I didn't have an easy linear path with my education in the sense that I couldn't, just because of obstacles in my life, couldn't start school right away, go to the schools I wanted, like have that sort of linear, you graduate, you start school right away, you're a full-time student. And so struggled with that a little bit. And because of that, it always just became a passion of mine to help students. You look at instances in your own life and how an education like just changes the trajectory of your life. And
Hmm.
once I got mine, it was very, very, very important to me to stay connected to students. I thought my impact was going to be through like working in education. And so I started working at a university, realized the upward mobility required PhDs, and that wasn't something that I was interested in. So I then took a shot in the association world and had an amazing, amazing experience in the association world. Actually, would recommend um, that an experience to people seeking different experiences in their career. And then I often in this industry in government contracting, I joke that NASA was my gateway drug agency into GovCon because growing up in the DC area, I grew up around a lot of government contracting entrepreneurs. And just by osmosis, heard them talking all the time about um, struggling to grow their business or how contracts are won or they were struggling with the protests and fighting incumbentitis, and I had known about the business a while. It was just never something that interested me, but through a lot of the nonprofit work that I did, especially with entrepreneurs, I got offered a position at NASA for a new program that they were sort of enterprise wide launching. That sort of helped me pivot into learning cybersecurity at the time because I would struggle with imposter syndrome when I was at NASA because I would be like, oh my God, I'm at NASA, everybody's 10 times smarter than me. And I would just like go around and ask people like, what did you get your degree? Like the person that was leading all cybersecurity for NASA got their undergraduate degree in history. And so that really helped me understand like the inflection point that really any IT organization is in, right? It's constantly modernizing, changing, evolving, and they need talent that is genuinely curious and willing to learn and make like quick impacts. And it doesn't matter like what you went to school for, right? So I would say I just had a lot of growth at NASA and really amazing opportunities. That's where I got the chance to work for the I would say the most amazing female CIO in government, Renee Wynn, and she's stayed a mentor of mine through the years. She's also an inspiration in not pigeonholing yourself. She's not just a CIO. She sits on boards. She's done a TED Talk. She's constantly reinventing herself, and so it was very cool to meet people like that don't necessarily just they're not one dimensional.
Hmm. Wow, I really I like the variety of things that you've done. So I'm gonna roll it back a little bit. Like
Yeah.
when you were deciding to get your education, or actually you were deciding to come to the United States. So you came to the United States for educate through an educational mechanism.
No, I was five.
Okay, all right.
So it wasn't my decision. It was my family's, but I'm glad they did it.
Yeah, of course. So as you were then choosing your educational route, how did you pick where to go?
Well, I think it sort of worked out for me that I didn't get to choose right after high school. I think a lot of times when students start right after high school, they sort of have this pressure on them. They think they know something that they like at that moment in time. I really, at that time, wanted to go like a doctor or a lawyer path. I think in high school, I leaned more towards med. And then as I got closer to college, very much passionate about pursuing law.
Mhm.
This is also why I think experiences are really important. You have to take internships and work different gigs. And I realized in that process, um, when a law changes overnight, you're working like an 18-hour like shift and like it that and there wasn't a lot of like autonomy with your with where you could work, right? Having ownership over my schedule and being able to do my job from different places was something that was important to me. And when you go the IT route, that's definitely a possibility, right? But I think for me, I mean, I was just such a curious person that was always willing to try, explore new things. My friends joke that I tend to like go down these rabbit holes where I'm like, they're like, what's your rabbit hole right now? And I'm like really passionately pursuing, learning about a certain subject or person or topic. And I think I just did a lot of that. And a lot of it was also Jeremy happenstance, right? Like just being in
Mhm.
the right place at the right time around the right people. Having mentors like Renee, having mentors like I have at Leidos, who I've known from the small business that I was at. They ask you questions that always get you closer to what you want to do. And that's been very helpful for me in my life.
Hmm. And then I really like how you highlighted the educational background of somebody like this, the cybersecurity person, in that it's so interesting in IT that I would agree with you. Passion and willingness to learn or desire to stretch yourself is so much more important than whatever you got your degree in our field. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm not gonna, I'm not to say there aren't aspects of IT that require real science, right? There are aspects that require real science.
Sure.
Like if you want to go work for NSA and do encryption, you better really know math, right? There's some things you better really be into.
Yeah.
But like in general, with the GovCon, the kind of things we do, delivering business systems and solutions that meet a specific need, no, you can't. In fact, everything my degree is in computer science, and I don't use any of that.
Yeah.
It didn't matter as much for what I do. And I know people who are executives in the government who never went to college, right? They just
Yeah.
learned it all, were passionate about learning it all. How has, as you said, seeing somebody like that, he kind of gave you, I don't know what, a release, right? Take away some of your imposter syndrome. Talk a bit
I,
about that because I'm curious, like how did that then change your attitude towards what you could achieve?
I think the passion and curiosity is just the most important trait that you could possibly have, right? And especially to be successful in government contracting, right? There's so many changes that happen. There's different ways that business gets done. Every agency operates differently. So having passion for those missions, but also having curiosity on like how do you make an impact today with the
Mm,
tools you have today, with the tools of tomorrow, right? I think that is something that I was again very lucky. NASA was a breeding ground for that, right? And so typically sometimes when you go into a certain agency, they don't have as many locations as NASA does, or they don't have as many different mission areas that NASA did, right? What the JPL Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California is doing is very different than what Kennedy Space Center was doing in Florida, right? And so that exposure, I would say, was very, very helpful to me. But I think also in the different, and I gave you one example, there's dozens from people that I met there, right? Even this gentleman, Ron, who ran the cybersecurity reports, he was an inspiration in himself with the way that he handled someone, coached me or taught me the things that I learned about cybersecurity, right? Or that I could get it, right? Like that belief in someone that I will help you learn this new
hmm
skill, right? That was just I it gives you a lot of confidence in yourself, but I think also having these examples of like you know reinventing yourself or knowing that you're not just going to have one path in life, you can have multiple. It gives you confidence to know that like your background and the skills that you have are unique. What I share with other folks in government contracting is I again had a non-traditional path where typically when people graduate, they tend to go to work in a large company right away. They want to go and get like that training at a large company. I started at a small, I went to a mid-tier, and then I went to a large, right? And so it's sort of backwards from that typical government contracting path. And I think if you don't have these types of mentors or examples in your life, you can very easily go down a path where you're like, am I doing it the right way? Should I have done it the other way? Maybe that would have been the better thing for me. And you really get confidence in yourself and you're like, no, my way worked out perfectly for the unique person that I am. And I think that's been really great for me.
Yeah, I like that you highlight that there is a variety and difference between a small, a medium, and a large company, right? That the
Mhm.
processes they have, the level of um, influence you have, and then the opportunities you have are completely different, all three of them.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's again where I would say right place, right time. The small that I was at had some life left on the 8A, so I got to be there through what an 8A, like having an 8A in the graduation is like. The emerging large or the mid-tier that I went to had just gone into that emerging large market, and now you're competing with a lot of these larger companies. And then at Leidos, I came post a reorg.
Mm.
Um, and a completely, I joined the digital modernization sector, a brand new sector in the company, right? I've always been that change agent. I've always done white space. And so for me, it's very exciting to come at these unique points in time because that's where learning happens really fast. And I look for that, right? Going back to that passion and curiosity.
That's amazing. So, Arfa, when you look back over your career and you think about things that have occurred or happened, what's something you would highlight and say, man, I wish we did that differently in our industry? And it could be related to, how we treat people or how we do work. But what's one, or maybe you have a few things that you would like to just highlight and say, man, I wish we could change that for the better, make it more efficient. And I'll caveat to say, you and I aren't going to make that happen today, but we may talk about it and hopefully
Yeah.
somebody takes that idea and runs with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say the number one thing is the way procurement happens.
Hmm.
I think there are a couple of things that have very much taken us forward, but there's a lot of work still to be done. Those two things I would say, the ACT-IAC program, that matching of government with industry and actually um, forging those relationships and conversations, giving that safe space for that when people are very hesitant in the business of I can't talk to you right now because of this, I can't, like it gives you that casual environment where you really see each other as partners,
Hmm.
partners to bring missions forward. I would say that's a huge step in the right direction, and having more events and organizations that allow for those spaces to be created is huge. The other thing related to procurement, I think the pill has brought government contracting forward in an awesome way where you're not just saying what you can do, but you have to show it. But there's still a long road ahead in terms of how things are procured. A lot of the maturity that um, I had in just like navigating procurement was at the emerging large, right? Is realizing that emerging large doesn't necessarily mean you're like a billion-dollar business, but now you're in this rock and a hard place where you're sort of stuck and you have amazing talent, you've built an amazing culture, and it's almost like the government's like, sorry,
Hmm.
go against a billion-dollar company and maybe you'll win this, right? And so I think that really shuts the door to really mature companies that have just done things so well and so right, and now they're just in a rock and a hard place, right? So I think there's work to be done there as well.
Oh, that's such an interesting point. I've been in this industry for quite a while. I did contracting for, consulting first, and then I came into
Yeah.
government. And you're right. I mean, it is sad to see companies that graduate from small business and then disappear because they can't win the work because their competitive edge is completely gone. And I don't know if it's because we overemphasize small business because small businesses are so important to America. I don't want to ever say we don't,
Yeah.
overemphasize. I don't want to say we overemphasize them, but it is an interesting fact that once you graduate out of that program and you're competing against the likes of Lockheed Martin and GDIT and large companies that have lots and lots of background in an area. Plus, they're diversified, so they don't, they're not hurt as much if they don't win a contract. Yeah, there's got to be a way to solve that. And you're right. Today, we're not going to figure that out at all.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I've seen great talent having to leave because the contract's no longer small business.
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate what happens sort of during that process.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, but that being said, I love my small businesses. I will say a lot of my growth happened at a small. It is where you can just learn so fast, and I would encourage anyone that's considering a career in government contracting, work at a small, raise your hand, say I'll do it. You'll get the chance to do a lot of different things and learn at a very accelerated pace.
Yeah, it was very interesting for me when I was at a small. I did delivery. I built a solution, but I was also writing proposals, and I was always also doing tech presentations to try to win those proposals. And
Mhm.
I loved it. It it
I
it
loved
it,
it.
it opened, and then somebody sitting next to you is like, "I'm trying to figure out this problem, and it's not your area at all." And you're like, "Hey, let's brainstorm," right? And
Yeah,
it's such a great experience.
yeah, yeah, it's great.
So, what's coming up for you here in the new year?
Coming up in the new year, I had such a big year this year. I think if the new year is just like totally even and calm, it would be awesome. I did a lot of travel. You mentioned the certification I got this year that happened in February of this year. So I'm really excited just to, I took a 6 month sabbatical this year. I learned a lot about just family, friends, taking a step back. And so I'm excited to go into the new year just completely refreshed with a new job. I'm a couple months in at Leidos now, and so just very much looking forward to like being. I was away from government contracting for a little bit during the sabbatical period, so it's nice to be in company with my friends who I very much miss and coworkers and going back to events again. So I'm actually really looking forward to like what government contracting is going to be like. There's going to be an administration change, and that's going to have implications on how agencies are going to set their strategy or what they're going to choose to invest or not invest in. So I think it's going to be an exciting year for government contracting.
Well, Arfa, it's always great to talk to you. I'm so happy I finally got you on the podcast, and I look forward to seeing you at the next event we both go to.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks so much, Jeremy.